begin the meeting. Welcome to this 14th meeting. Welcome to the 14th meeting of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're going to conclude our second study on the effects of the housing shortage on Indigenous peoples across Canada. To begin, we will hear from our first panel of Chief April Martel from the Kaloodytchi First Nation, and Mr. Justin Marchand, who is chair of the Indigenous Housing Caucus at the Canadian Housing Renewal Association, and then Ms. Jocelyn Formsma, Executive Director, and Kelly Benning, President of the National Association of Friendship Centres. I would remind you of the Board of Internal Economy's directive concerning masking and physical distancing. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow for our meeting. Members or witnesses who may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available in English, French, and Inuktitut. Please be patient with the interpretation. There may be a delay, especially since the Inuktitut has to be translated into English first before it can be translated into French, and vice versa. The interpretation button is found at the bottom of your screen, and you may select. It's a globe, and you can select either English, French, or Inuktitut. If you please. If there's any problem, please tell us. Raise your hand. There is the button at the bottom of the screen. You can use it at any time if you wish to speak. Speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Make sure you are not on mute, and those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. And when speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And when you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. Is there much more? No? Okay. So, a reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. And each organization has been invited to give a 5-minute statement, which will be followed by a period of questions from the members. The first round of questions will allow members 6 minutes each. The order and time for subsequent rounds will be as follows. Conservative Party 5 minutes, Liberal 5, Bloc Québécois 2.5, New Democratic Party 2.5, Conservative Party 5, and then a Liberal 5 minutes. I would now like to invite Chief Martel to start us off. You have 5 minutes. Chief Martel.
Good day, everyone. Masi Cho from the Kaloodytchi First Nation. I am Chief April Martel. I want to say it's an honor to sit here with all of you. And as the invite, thank you for this opportunity to give me a couple of minutes. I would just like to say that I am a very vocal person when it comes to housing here in the Northwest Territories, but also all over. I sit as the chairperson for the Dene Nation here in the Northwest Territories. I am the Treaty 8 Reserve. I'm the first reserve established here in the Northwest Territories. So I've been elected 3 years ago, and my platform is housing. I just want to tell you that, here on the reservation in the Northwest Territories, I also sit with the Assembly of First Nation I am a committee for the housing with the Assembly of First Nations, so I work with a lot of Indigenous First Nations across Canada. I just also want to say, that here on the Katlodeci First Nation on the reserve, we only have 80 houses. Capital costs and renovations are very high because, the houses are very outdated. The federal funding that we currently benefit for Katlodeci First Nation is going through the government of the Northwest Territories. So the government of the Northwest Territories controls and decides on who and what housing needs are required in not only reserves, but First Nations in the Northwest Territories. Demographics in our community, basically, in my community, the housing need is required. It's urgent with Katlodeci First Nation on reserves. So that's basically where that is. The challenges that I see for KFN to access mortgages or credits, it's very hard to access to banks. Katlodeci First Nation just recently passed the land code, but we're currently in the process of trying to work with banks, and it's kind of hard to access funding through that. The government of the Northwest Territories, we're trying to work with them on housing needs and assessments and renovations currently right now, but they're telling us there is no money for renovations or anything. So I just want to say Masi Cho for speaking and for addressing the issues on the housing needs here on Katlodeci First Nation and in the Northwest Territories. Masi Cho.
Merci.
Thank you. We will now move to Mr. Justin Marchand, Chair of the Indigenous Housing Caucus at the Canadian Housing Renewal Association. Please go ahead.
Ani Buju, Biwaneg Indigenous Migizido Dem, Bawating and Donjaba, Métis Anishinaabe. My name is Justin Marchand. My spirit name is Fire Rock. I am Métis, the CEO of Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services and Chair of the Indigenous Caucus. I pray that all our grandmothers, grandfathers, spirits, the Manitous, Gitche Manitou, be with us all for this important discussion. I humbly pray the words I speak may not be of my own, but that of Jemnado. Miigwech for the invitation to appear before this committee, and I would like to acknowledge all the members that are on this committee. I believe this committee is open to hearing the truth. I'm asking this committee to use their influence to convey to the Government of Canada the importance of supporting an earned strategy in a more meaningful way. We see yesterday's budget choice as a tiny step for Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern areas, and is not truly reflective of the housing crisis. It is disappointing that these so-called new investments are being paid for on the backs of Indigenous people who are living through a precipitous and continued cut to urban native housing programs across Canada by this government. We do not need more tiny steps. We need a big, bold step, both for Indigenous people and for Canadians. A continued solely distinctions-based policy is a continued colonial construct that seeks to purposely divide, exclude, assimilate, and institutionalize a collective memory loss of some of the richest, most valuable cultures in the world. These colonial constructs are designed to create intentional exclusionary policy that affect the lives of so many Indigenous people. Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern areas are treated differently than other people. It is admirable and right that Canada wants to call out human rights abuses, including those based on race, culture, and gender in other countries. And that is why it is so terribly confusing that Canada continues policy choices that exclude some people based on race, culture, and gender right here. A system is perfectly designed for the outcomes it gets, and the housing outcomes for Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern areas are appalling. How do we know this awful situation is true? Canada knows this is true and knows this is the facts because this is Canada's own data. Over 80% of Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern areas. Indigenous people are 11 times more likely to experience homelessness. Indigenous mother-led households have incidence of need that is twice that of non-Indigenous mother-led households. And all Indigenous people in urban, rural, and northern areas have an incidence of core housing need that is 52% higher than all Canadians. Canada also knows that nearly half of the women in jail, almost half of all children in care are First Nations, despite being only 3% of the total population. And when Indigenous people are exited from government institutions, where do they go? Overwhelmingly to urban, rural, and northern areas, and often without a safe housing option. Canada knows that the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls report mentioned housing 299 times, the lack of housing being a significant contributing cause to violence, and the provision of housing being a fundamental solution to ending violence against women, girls, and two-spirited LGBTQIA+ people. Canada knows because the HUMA Committee asked the Parliamentary Budget Officer for advice, and the PBO provided that advice last year. And the multi-party committee unanimously agreed that a solution for Indigenous people by Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern areas was necessary. And the National Housing Council this year, who strongly communicated the same truths from Indigenous people. Yet again, Canada has chosen not to boldly embrace the truth as told by its own statisticians, its own HUMA Committee, its own Parliamentary Budget Officer, and its own National Housing Council. Using the PBO's estimates, yesterday's budget might address 1.09% of the issue. Using CMHC's updated data, the federal budget might address 0.70% of the issue over the next 5 long years. In the meantime, we'll continue to pick up the dead bodies of Indigenous people off Canada's streets. So, what should Canada do, and what is the solution? Canada should accept the advice it asked for from its own institutions, its own officials, its own commissions, and Canada should accept the offer of help from Indigenous people who are willing to do the hard work for Indigenous people and rectify the issues being created by Canada's past and current choices. Canada must immediately make a choice to be intentionally inclusive, starting with the allocation of resources as recommended by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Canada must take a decolonized approach to delivery and utilize the 50+ years of experience of numerous urban Indigenous service providers across this land. Finally, Canada must be brave enough to care about all Indigenous people, regardless of their geographic location. While distinctions-based strategies are absolutely important and are underfunded, we need a distinct urban, rural, and northern solution for Indigenous people who are consistently not served. Now how?
I apologize, but your time is up. I would recall that you can always send in your presentation in writing so that we can study it. Thank you very much. I would now ask the National Association of Friendship Centers, Ms. Formsa, to take the floor.
Good afternoon. This is Kelly Benning. I'm the president of the National Association of Friendship Centers. I'm joining you virtually today from Northern Alberta, home of the Cree, Beaver, Dene, and Métis people in Treaty 8 territory. I want to thank the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs for the opportunity to speak on the effects of housing shortages on urban Indigenous people. I would also like to thank the other speakers who have come today and acknowledge the essential work that they do for the communities. Together, our work addresses the critical issues of housing and homelessness that impacts our communities and will continue to impact our people if community-led Indigenous responses are not implemented. Most Canadian cities are built on traditional Indigenous gathering spaces. As long as there have been urban centers, there's been Indigenous people living there. According to the 2016 census, more than 1.6 million people identified as Indigenous. More than 1 million, or over 60% of those people, live in urban environments. Urban Indigenous people make up the largest portion of Indigenous people, yet we are often left out of the conversation when it comes to issues or legislation that directly affects us. The distinctions-based approach that the federal government uses in policy, legislation, and decision-making is intended to recognize the diversity of the 3 First Peoples of Canada and how their needs, wants, governments, cultures, and world views differ. However, there are nuances within Indigenous identities. For example, there are layered identities that many of us experience in addition to our identities as First Nation, Inuit, or Métis, such as gender, location, residency, sexual orientation, age, and abilities. From an urban and service delivery experience, the distinctions-based approach result is often inconsistent patchwork of funding, which makes Indigenous organizations compete against each other. By prioritizing only distinctions based between First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, the Government of Canada has no mechanism to see or address the full spectrum of Indigenous peoples experiencing or ultimately compromises our ability to have our full sets of human rights realized. Since the 1950s, friendship centers have been central in the urban Indigenous community growth and flourishing, providing programs and services and gathering spaces for our friends and families. Friendship centers across Canada provide a wide range of housing and shelter options, including emergency crisis shelters, violence prevention, shelters, homeless shelters, transitional housing, supportive housing, and long-term housing. In addition, our work includes crucial wraparound support such as food, security, employment and training, childcare, before and after school programming, healthcare services, and counseling, among others. Friendship centers partner with many organizations to provide the most support to the most people we can because community members rely on us. The lack of safe and affordable housing contributes to poor health, chronic illness, homelessness, increased risk or premature death, and the breakdown of families. Indigenous and community-led wraparound programming, such as the programs mentioned above, are an effective approach to addressing housing and homelessness crisis in urban Indigenous communities across the country. Housing and homelessness continue to be the central focus of Friendship Center's work. Yesterday's announcement of $300 million for the Urban, Rural, and Northern Housing Initiative is not enough to meet the needs for urban Indigenous people. The National Housing Council recommended $6 billion for the Urban, Rural, and Northern Housing Initiative. The National Association of Friendship Centers has offered and remains committed to playing a role in ensuring those funds are administered by Indigenous people for Indigenous people and organizations. In our budget ask, we sought funds to make up infrastructure funding gap in friendship centers whose cost includes major repairs, renovations, and security space for lands and to require the demands of the community. The National Association applied for funds to support Friendship Center-wide housing plan, wherein we plan to collect data and information on housing needs, including forecasting for every community in which there is a Friendship Center. And we were denied funding to do this important work. There are great urban Indigenous and Indigenous housing entities.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I have to interrupt you as well, but as for Mr. Marchand, you can send in your notes. And we are now going to the first round of questions, starting with Ms. Gladue, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing today. I'd like to start with Mr. Marchand. It's disheartening to hear that after the government has continued to say that the nation-to-nation relationship is their number one priority, that still in this budget, you called it a tiny step and said that a bold step was needed. Can you comment on what exactly is the gap that the government needs to address and the timing that you'd like to see that in?
Yes, thank you, MP Gladue. The Parliamentary Budget Officer undertook a study of this issue. There's been a number of studies that have been completed by organizations such as ours. And that gap, we know that for Ontario alone, for example, is $22 billion for urban Indigenous people. The Parliamentary Budget Officer indicates that there's a range of a need, depending on how you measure that, between 638 million per year and $1.4 billion. This is help that we need now. This is not something that needs to be further quote, co-developed, as was phrased in the budget, for another 5 years. The strategy has already been developed, and what we need is delivery, not further study.
Very good, thank you. And a question for Chief Martel. I appreciate the difficulty of constructing houses in the north with the short construction season and all of the expenses there. And the government has suggested that perhaps multiple houses could be built at the same time. But I'm wondering if that's even feasible with the way the financing is, overseen by the government of the Northwest Territories. Could you comment on that?
Thank you, Marilyn. Yes. So again, the weather does. We only get like 2 months here in the Northwest Territories. Financing, it's really complicated with the GNWT. The direct funding comes from the federal government to the GNWT, and then for us to access funding from the GNWT is very complicated. I would have to wait 2 years like right now, I applied with the government of the Northwest Territories under the Housing Corporation, and it's going to take me 2 years to review the application, and then probably another year, so 3, to actually build my home. So it's a little complicated. If the funding was direct to the First Nations, we can take that on and build our own homes in the Dene Valley of how our people, built our homes, and we can do that by them allowing to build their own homes. And so it makes it a lot better that way.
Yeah, that sounds much more efficient. Thank you. And to Ms. Benning, you talked about how 60% of Indigenous individuals are living in urban circumstances, and that those are different challenges that maybe are faced in the remote places. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, most of the Indigenous population, like I said, lives in urban centers, and it's challenging for people to have their needs met outside of their original community, or always constantly being connected back to their original community, which some people may have not lived in for a while. Myself, I'm second generation urban Indigenous, so that can prove to be a big challenge. People being directed to a place where they perhaps don't live, or they're not recognized.
Well, and we know the affordable housing crisis, is making this even worse. Under the Liberal government, house prices have doubled, and there is really lack of available affordable housing. Is that a factor for Indigenous people in urban settings?
Absolutely. You see in most urban centers across Canada, you see a large number of Indigenous people that are homeless or without housing, which, like I said, it breaks down family units as well. It puts children at risk, it puts families at risk. And I mean, as we've seen from all the reports on murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, we're at great risk living on the streets of urban centers.
Absolutely. We need to see some prompt action on the murdered and missing Aboriginal women report. Finally, there was a talk about the lack of money for renovations. And if you can't create new affordable spaces, at least you have to fix the ones that you have. And so perhaps Chief Martel and Ms. Benning, you could comment on what you think the government needs to do there. Start with you, Chief Martel.
Thank you again. Yes, there is a lack of renovations here in the Northwest Territories, along with on my reservation. Renovations is a big thing. It's actually costing our First Nations more money to go to elders and fix their homes. And we actually do that through administration. So there is no renovation money in the Northwest Territories. And I'm advocating for that as well, because right now we're seeing a very high number of overcrowding in homes here on my reserve, only 80 houses with over 220 people. So you can see that there is a large amount of overcrowding on the reservation, people getting sick. We're trying our best on homelessness. We have to buy small little trailers to put people in there, but it's not
I'm afraid that's time.
Yeah, that is time. Thank you very much, witnesses. Thank you, Ms. Glady, for your questions. We go on to the next round of 6 minutes. We go to the Liberal Party now. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses today. Very interesting presentations. I want to quickly make a little bit of a statement on the Friendship Centers, then ask Chief Martel a question. I really appreciate the work that the Friendship Centers are doing, and I personally think that every Indigenous community in this country should have a Friendship Center with expanded mandates and, of course, a budget that supports it. My question is to K'atlo D'ichi First Nations Chief Martel. First of all, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you here. And I think we've talked about housing many times with some of the challenges that you're facing. First of all, the K'atlo D'ichi is a reserve, but it's not treated the same as a reserve in the south. K'atlo D'ichi is also an Indigenous community, but it's not treated as the same as the Indigenous communities in the north. So now that you're here presenting it for us, maybe you could take the opportunity to tell us what steps the Government of Canada could take to recognize the unique nature of reserves north of 60, such as yours, like KFN, and how could they make sure that they have better access to federal housing programs?
Masicho, MP McLeod, to access better funding, I think the direct funding would help a lot with not only KFN ourselves, but with Salt River First Nation. We are very unique in the Northwest Territories as there is only 2 reserves in the Northwest Territories. So, and we should be treated a lot better than, I think we should be treated a lot better. We don't get access to reserve funding from the federal government. The GNW takes and claws back that funding. So if the direct funding can happen, that would help the 2 reserves a lot in the Northwest Territories. Masicho.
Could you maybe tell us why K'atlo D'ichi, which is a federal a reserve that was formed by the federal government, is not funded like the other reserves in the south are? Do you know why that is?
I have asked the government of the Northwest Territories that question many times. I've met with previous MPs, ministers on that matter, and they said the funding, they speak on behalf of the reserves. So I get treated a little differently, including Salt River First Nation. So we're trying to work out with the GNWT on direct funding, and I think it would help a lot. But they did say that the funding doesn't come to reserves because we need to sit with the other governments as well.
So could you tell us if you get any funding directly from the federal government at this point? And has the reserve at any point since it was created received any funding similar to what the reserves in the south get?
No, we haven't, Your Honor. We have not received any direct funding from the federal government. We actually have to wait for the government of the Northwest Territories for any callouts for funding. The government of the Northwest Territories applies for all funding on behalf of the 2 reserves and all the nations within the NWT. So we have to basically apply the same.
I'm not sure if you would have a dollar figure, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What would it take? What would an annual budget have to look like to make sure that the membership of your community is living in safe and secure homes? Would you have an estimate what it would cost on an annual basis?
So it would probably, for the amount of statistics that we went through and just seeing like renovations and housing requirements needed, we are at a high level of poverty line right now on the reserve here. So probably looking up to close to 8 to 10 million just to build. And this is just modular because right now there's only a certain amount of time for weather to actually build and bring lumber to the reserve. So it'll take a lot of money to access to build a couple additional houses on the reserve.
Thank you. Thank you, April. Thank you, Chief. And those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. McLeod. We go to our next witness for 6 minutes, Madame Gill from the Bloc Québécois.
No, that's too.
Oh,
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses and Mr. Marchand, Chief Martel, and Ms. Benning for their testimony, and I'm sure that we lost some time at the beginning of the meeting, and Ms. Forsman, as I saw yesterday that you were analyzing and you were criticizing the federal budget. But of course, even though we're in committee here today, there was a budget yesterday that was presented, and I would wonder what your opinion is on what was announced in the budget yesterday.
Thank you for the question. So we there was record amounts of money announced for Indigenous and under the reconciliation framework, and fraction of that budget has even been identified for urban. Just going to, Mr. Marchand's point, which we support, the CHRA, the Indigenous Caucus, they have a plan. We're supportive of that plan. We want to be a part of implementing that plan. We're doing it anyway. We're just not getting the resources. Partly why some people come to the urban setting is because of the lack of housing and infrastructure within First Nations or in the North. And we absolutely support those resources going to those communities as well. Those are our family. We're not in competition with each other, right? We're just trying to identify the need and trying to address the realities of existing frameworks and funding. We're extremely disappointed that, considering all of the testimony, all of the information and everything that we provided to the government, numerous departments, that there was nothing really announced for urban specific strategies. And if we don't have urban specific strategies for Indigenous people, we're missing and we're choosing to leave out the vast majority of Indigenous peoples. And that includes in housing. Thank you.
Si je vous posais une autre question, Madame Fomsa.
I'd like to ask you another question, and the money is not sufficient, but when you see the number of Indigenous persons living in cities, and there doesn't seem to be sufficient movement and action. I know that you're worried about this in the long term, and even in rural areas. And I think this is something that must really be dealt with urgently.
Yeah, in our pre-budget submission, I think we took a whole of government approach and we gave a really good look into what the needs are. And I think we were being very reasonable in our asks. And we're, as Friendship Centers, we're not the only players in the game. We recognize that. We are very large and significant in terms of our network and the reach across the country. And so, just to give a sense, already Friendship Centers, which are grassroots organizations built by and for Indigenous people, Métis, First Nations, and Inuit, we're already subsidizing the services that we support. On average, we think it costs about $300,000 just to keep the lights on and the doors open in the Friendship Center. Just for that base amount, what we get is closer to, on average, about $120,000 to $150,000 per Friendship Center. So we're already subsidizing half of what it costs just to operate that. If you were to start the Friendship Center movement and provide those grassroots supports to Indigenous peoples across the country today, it would cost more than $11 billion to...
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. I'd like to ask your colleague something with regard to this strategy. We never have enough time, I think. And maybe I can ask Mr. Marchand, because there is a strategy indicated by the Institute of Fiscal, the Urban Institute. I want to say that rather than having people working in their various areas, everybody has their own strategy. And Mr. Marchand, do you believe that the strategy that you proposed has been taken into account by the government? And if not, what do you think has to be done to meet your suggestions and the needs of your organization?
Yes, thank you, MP Gill, for the question. Merci. We proposed a community-led housing solution. We proposed a strategy that is for Indigenous, by Indigenous, for Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern areas. What we saw in the budget yesterday was a strategy that will be under the control of CMHC. And similar to what Chief Martel had mentioned, is that we know that strategies and implementation, which is what is really important, is most effectively led by the people that those strategies are meant to serve.
You have time for one more quick question.
Bon, en fait, j'aurais aimé savoir si l'ensemble.
I would wonder if Chief Martel is in agreement and whether the three witnesses are in agreement with efforts to help the Indigenous.
Je n'ai peut-être pas été claire. Ça s'adresse en fait à l'ensemble. Je voulais
I was just wondering whether the other witnesses could confirm that they share the concerns that have been expressed.
Absolutely. For Indigenous, by Indigenous, that's us, that's our model. And I think if the government's talking about a devolution of services in the urban spaces, friendship centers have a really important role to play, especially in those wraparound supports.
Okay, I do have to go to our next panelist. We have the NDP, Ms. Idlout, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all. Jocelyn, I'd like to greet you personally, as I went to law school with you at the University of Ottawa. First, I will ask a short question. The 2022 budget presented yesterday, have you read that and researched it thoroughly for Aboriginal benefits?
Apologies, yes, it took me a second to get off mute. Yes, we have our analysis that our team has been working on. We're going to be publishing it later today. I mean, we're encouraged to see the investments in Indigenous communities, absolutely. We hope that they're going to lead to meaningful change. But we've been very critical that of what was announced, the distinctions-based approach is going to leave people behind and leave people out, and that they don't have any plan for urban-specific strategies. And I think those are two major gaps that need to be closed if the funding that's announced is going to achieve what they hope it will achieve.
I would, if I could have the other speakers respond to my question, and that would be great.
Sure, I'll jump in. Yes, we've reviewed the budget with respect to Indigenous housing, and as I mentioned earlier, the budget indicated that the funds were to co-develop a strategy, something that has already been done. So we feel it would be a much better use of resources to actually implement an urban, rural, northern Indigenous housing strategy than to further study the issue that has already been the strategy of which has already been developed. We're ready to go, and we've let the government know that over the last 6 years. And so we would like the government to, again, to follow the advice of the Parliamentary Budget Officer and provide sufficient funding to the Indigenous people who are best suited to deliver the housing that Indigenous people need.
Chief Martel here. I would just like to say that I want to thank everyone for the budget but we did have a strategic plan here in the Northwest Territories. Everyone was on board with strategic planning, but what we want to see is the building of houses now, because it is summertime. So by the time we get the federal funding dollars flowed to the Northwest Territories, it's going to take a while, and we have to be planning on building our home, building the pad. So we have to acknowledge that, you know, the weather, climate change, and all that puts an effect on the budget. So if they can acknowledge that, that would help a lot.
Did they all respond? One person, I believe, I forget the name, may want to respond. One of the speakers, last speaker, Friendship Center.
Our response was given by Jocelyn Formsma, our executive director. And just to reiterate that the National Association of Friendship Centers has offered and remains committed to playing a role in ensuring that that funds are administered by Indigenous people for Indigenous people and organizations. Thank you.
Do I have time to ask another question? Or no? I can wait till the next one.
You're on mute.
Yes, you do. You have a minute and a half left.
Okay. I didn't have time to speak. Question. We've been told various times that flexibility is what one of the major needs are from different organizations and institutions. Can you respond to us, all of the witnesses? What does flexibility look like for you?
Perhaps I could just jump in quickly. So we saw what flexibility could do under the Indigenous Community Support Fund, which the Friendship Centers have been allocating over the last 2 years. This was the most flexible funding that we have ever seen. And what it did was allow our local Friendship Centers to come up with solutions that really met the needs of the community members in real time, without the typical restrictions of programs, without the typical restraints. We were able to go far and above I think what we would have done to respond to community in real time is flexibility that's really worked for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Sidlout, and thank you very much to all our witnesses for your testimony today. It will help greatly in our study as we finish this this important work that we're doing here. I want to briefly suspend this meeting so we can go to our in-camera portion in which we can go over our drafting instructions.
No, not the in-camera portion, sir. It's just the, we're going to briefly suspend
Switch
in between panels.
Okay, that works too. Okay, I will briefly suspend. moderate that, but also look to our second panel of witnesses, and we welcome them to our meeting. As you probably know already, you have 5 minutes opening statement, followed by our first round of questionings at 6 minutes each. I have on my list to begin is Ms. Corinne Child, Executive Director of the Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness Society. Please, Ms. Child.
Gila Kesla, Nugo Ambiakawilas. My name is Corinne Child. I'm Kwagilk from the northern end of Vancouver Island, and I'm zooming in today from the Lekwungen territory, specifically Esquimalt and Songhees nations. So I just honor them for allowing me to be here today. Thank you very much for having this important conversation on Indigenous housing. So as the Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness, we have an island-wide mandate. We're specifically serving the Indigenous population of individuals that are experiencing homelessness here in Victoria. And what I'm hoping to highlight to you today, I won't spend too much time. I've actually looked and viewed some of the conversations that have happened. And I know that the stats and the data and the numbers and the, numbers of incarceration and all of the papers that we have there and the research are there and present. But what I'm hoping to share today is a bit about the solutions around really asking the federal government to look at Indigenous organizations that are doing the service directly on the ground that impact the Indigenous communities that are experiencing chronic homelessness or needing other alternatives. The Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness has been in the birth of it happened about 5 years ago with a study. And we didn't initially plan to be a service provider. But what we realized is that we, with the connection to the Indigenous street community, needed to address some of the words that were being shared with the ones experiencing homelessness. And so we've now become a service provider. We've opened up 2 houses, but the one thing that I want to be able to highlight in this work that we've done, we've grown exponentially because of the need. We have 35% of Indigenous people that we're serving here in Victoria that are experiencing homelessness. And we've grown 700% in the past 23 months, going from 7 staff to now over 70. With that being said, as a nonprofit organization, that really connects us to having to apply for funding streams and competing with each other, which necessarily isn't always the best avenue to build something unique that I'll be sharing with you and innovative. So we've actually, through the work that we've done with the Indigenous street community, have evolved and developed what's called cultural supportive housing. Cultural supportive housing is more than cultural safety. It's more than offering 4 walls. It's really having Indigenous-led practices that we can incorporate our teachings and our knowledge and our way of life into some of the practices and services that are desperately needed. The one thing that I specifically remember hearing going out to visit some of our street community is I want to have Indigenous people serving us and looking like you and supporting me and telling me your success stories of how to get out of this. And so cultural supportive housing is not defined. It is something that is growing and lives and breathes every day. We have cultural mentors and supports that come in. And the other area that we're working on is decolonizing harm reduction. So meeting people where they're at, bringing in elders, bringing in traditional medicine, and with that, connecting to land-based healing. So one of our main focuses is getting our people off the street, taking a break from the cement and the sounds and going out into the land, connecting them to their traditional foods, creating healthy bellies and creating healthy awareness of themselves. And so that has been integral. I would really hope that the federal government looks at the landscape of supporting organizations like ourselves directly and not necessarily getting us to compete for those funds, but realizing that we're making an impact on the ground that is actually creating sustainable efforts. Some of the people that we've housed are housed longer than a year, and we're celebrating that with them. And that's because there's love in our organization and our delivery of services, and that is something that I hold very near and dear and proud of our amazing team and the leadership that is here. We're not doing things out of what we think we're the professionals. We're going to them to get the guidance of like, what does it need to look like? How do we get you out of lineups? How do we get you feeling that you're not entering the building and being documented at every move? But how do we make your house a home and a place that you could be proud of and familiar and away from systems that have held them oppressed? So I'm really looking forward to sharing further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that testimony. I want to bring the next witness in. We have a 5-minute round for Ms. Roy, the Director of Operations of the Aboriginal Friendship Center of Calgary. Ms. Roy, 5 minutes.
Ben, my name is Melissa Roy. I'm originally from Sidel Dell First Nation in BC. I'm honored to work and live in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the community members regarding the unique housing needs of our people in an urban setting. Calgary's 2018 housing assessment notes the need for affordable housing is expected to exceed 100,000 households by 2026. That same report cites the need for culturally sensitive housing and supports for Calgary's Indigenous population. Cultural reconnection is at the heart of everything we do at the Aboriginal Friendship Center of Calgary. Ongoing racism, discrimination, intergenerational trauma, and colonialism have disconnected our people from our cultures. This is especially true of urban Indigenous people, and national trends show migration from reserves to urban settings is increasing, which means the need for culturally sensitive housing and supports will continue to grow. Here's the reality of affordable housing in the city of Calgary. 20% of those renting makes $36,000 a year or less, which means they can afford to pay $900 a month. Only 11% of rentals can be found for $900 a month. Most of them are one-bedroom units. Rent has increased by 14% in the last year alone, and landlords have become more stringent on credit checks and income verification. Inflation is at an all-time high. The oil and gas sectors are rebounding, which is good news for the economy, but the rebound comes with its own challenges. Calgarians are now competing with oil and gas workers who come in from other provinces and countries for rental units, which adds to the pressure and the barriers our people face finding affordable housing. The 2018 What We Heard Report Summary, Indigenous Housing Capital Program, Alberta Seniors and Housing reports, Indigenous families are in the most need of affordable housing. The housing that's needed most to accommodate families are homes with 3 or more bedrooms. Now consider the housing landscape I have laid out for you. We work with survivors of domestic violence and their children, youth who left their reserves and do not have the life skills to thrive in the city, and those who are jobless. We work with individuals who have mental health and addiction issues, the chronically homeless, former sex trade workers, men and women leaving corrections. Now imagine you're one of these individuals who is trying to turn your life around. Housing is a social determinant of health. Yet the current systems continue to marginalize our people and set them up for failure. Families and individuals may wait up to 5 years to receive affordable housing. During that time, families and individuals are expected to check in with housing authorities. They don't receive reminders, and they fail to check in, they must redo the housing assessment. 12-step programs advise you to not associate with the people and places that are part of your life of addiction. Yet we place people who are trying to recover in unsafe neighborhoods, further crippling their chances of recovery and well-being. One mistake may result in eviction and a return to their old lifestyle. There is no flexibility and no humanity in the current processes. We need choice and self-determination. We need an increase in affordable housing inventory that integrates culture and Indigenous leadership. We need wraparound supports to help our people navigate that system. government policies continue to perpetuate poverty and housing insecurity. What are you prepared to do differently? Because what you're doing right now isn't working. It is time to move from calls to action into action. We must work together. We need to pay homage and value Indigenous worldviews. An example is our recently announced AFCC Elders Lodge, the first of its kind in Calgary. Funding from the Government of Canada, Government of Alberta, City of Calgary, and Calgary Homeless Foundation shows how this unique project can inspire future housing opportunities and demonstrate how integral community partners are in our journey to wellness. Our home fires need to be healthy to heal, and the way to well-being is through culture, which you can only understand through the act of reconciliation. Let us not forget the wise words of the commissioners of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Reconciliation is not an Aboriginal problem. It is a Canadian one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roy. Next up, we have Lisa Smith, the Senior Director of Governance, International and Parliamentary Relations, Native Women's Association of Canada. Ms. Smith, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. It's truly an honor to be amongst you all today. So thank you for the invitation, and to the other panel members, thank you very much. I'm really enjoying this discussion. I'm based out of NWAC's national office in Quebec, but I'm speaking to you today from my home in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, the land of the Beothuk. NWAC believes addressing Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people's access to housing is a necessary step forward in addressing the ongoing process of genocide in Canada. It is important to ground the basic right of housing for Indigenous peoples in UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Article 23 is engaged, and I would also argue, based on the last panel members' submissions, that Article 3, self-determination, is always a part of this discussion as well. Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people, honorable members, experience unique challenges to assessing affordable and safe housing. It is evident that ongoing challenges with colonialism, infrastructure, race, and gender-based discrimination continue to prevent Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people from assessing appropriate housing resources. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, MMIWG, reported that Indigenous women tend to experience high rate of violence because they lack housing. In the 231 calls for justice, honorable members, there are 10 calls for improving access to housing for Indigenous women. NWAC is working hard to help. We're very stretched, but we are helping. Under NWAC's Environmental Conservation and Climate Change Office, the housing project objective was to conduct research and engage with Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people to determine what their needs are and how they can be fulfilled. The housing project report was published on March 31, 2020. I'm just going to take a couple highlights from this. It's all very important, and I encourage you to read it on your own time. Extreme weather and coastal erosion brought on by climate change, right? So that's a part of the discussion as well, are already destroying the inadequate housing stock in Inuit Nunavut. And so the housing in the north has unique and varying factors. Also, as a backdrop to this discussion, according to Carol Patrick, sections 28 and 29 of the Indian Act prohibit lending institutions from seizing on reserve assets in the event of payment default. This makes them rarely willing to lend to First Nations on reserve, making it extremely difficult for First Nations to obtain financing to build or renovate their homes on reserve, honorable members. The result is an acute shortage of housing, which, along with population growth, makes it inevitable for families to crowd into any available shelter, no matter how poorly maintained. According to an interim report in APA and the other House honorable members, building codes are not developed for northern climates, and many houses were not designed for local climates and soil conditions, or were built with subpar building materials. Poor housing conditions have also led to an increase in house fires. The rate of fire deaths on reserve is 10 times higher than that of off-reserve populations. Further, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, Manitoba, extreme housing shortages in Canada's north means Indigenous women and their children can be forced to stay with abusive partners simply because they have nowhere else to go. If they do choose to flee their abusive homes, they can be forced into exploitive situations to meet their and their children's basic needs. So this is increasing the risks of homelessness. In some honorable members, access to a safe and good housing is necessary to ensure the health and safety of Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people is protected. Ultimately, Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people are experts of their own experiences and must be involved in the development and implementation strategies which address Indigenous housing needs. The MMIWG calls for justice must be implemented. NWAC would like to bring special attention to those relating to housing under the heading of human security, child welfare, and 2 SLGBTQIA specific calls for justice. Thank you, honorable members and panel members.
Right on time, Ms. Smith. Well done. Thank you very much. And thank you to all our witnesses for that amazing testimony. We will go to our first round of questioning. We have a 6-minute round up. And first off is Ms. Rood from the Conservative Party.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses today for your testimony. I'm just going to take a quick moment to highlight some challenges that one of the First Nations in my riding, Walpole Island First Nation, has faced in housing. And they've had many struggles for years, and 90% of homes on the island can't access natural gas. It forces them to use more expensive propane to heat their homes. And I've also heard from Walpole Island the struggles of the rising cost of building supplies due to inflation and what that has when they're trying to renovate their homes and up to just the minimum standards, or when building new structures. The infrastructure gap is wide here too, and land is available for development, but it doesn't have basic services like power, water, and sewer available, and it has to be added before the land can be developed. So Ms. Child, I just was wondering if, I know your organization focuses on Vancouver Island, but I see a lot of parallels to Indigenous communities in my riding. Walpole Island, Kettle and Stony Point First Nations have all struggled with the opioid epidemic, and they're working to help their communities recover. So I'm just wondering, what kind of impact does access to stable housing have on helping address the opioid crisis and alleviate homelessness? And I'm just wondering if maybe you can tell us what your organization has done that has worked, and if you could share possibly some success stories.
Thank you for your question. I do want to say over the past few years how important our land-based healing has been for the support of people that are not even just battling the opioid crisis, but also different forms of addiction. And when I look at some of the successes, there's individuals that have highlighted why they use opioids. And you find those conversations when you're having those intimate moments of like spiritual connection to land and to other areas where there's like reflection of life and the importance of taking a break from what is actually like causing those memories to like keep on flowing, and really celebrating the successes of where individuals are at. There's individuals that have shared, I've gone from 12 points to 6 points, and now I'm at 1 point of opioid use because of pain management. And so when you start to celebrate those along the way, you see the impact. And I've actually seen people move from those 12 points to 6 points to 1 point and have been able to sustain not using opioids for the past 18 months. And so I think it's those moments where you get to be a witness and a little bit of a champion and care to someone that someone believes that someone's going to be there consistently for them. And I think that's like the importance of like this conversation is the way in which the federal government can fund directly services like this so that we can create the consistency is very valid and important to this work. And looking at different avenues of innovation, like we use the term innovation, but that connection to community, I just want to say this, like when we're looking at Indigenous people, we need to know where they're coming from. The other thing I want to highlight is, I went into an institution, one of the prisons, and, this person that was supporting that individual said, oh, this person's not interested in culture and doesn't want to connect. And I said, well, where is this person from? And they're like, well, they're not connecting to the elder that's here. And the person was had the background of Cree, and the individual that was supporting them was a total different background. So if we're not linking that knowledge and linking the communities together, the practices won't flow, and that discussion doesn't become at ease. So I would say those are successes by making sure that we're investing into the Indigenous population and the partners that want to be able to do this frontline work. We're all impacted in different ways why we choose this work. And I want to say land-based healing has really brought a really powerful avenue to our work. And I know that we're going to be able to show those successes that it does work. Thank you.
You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you for sharing that. Ms. Smith, I have a question for you. I understand that it's been identified by previous witnesses in this committee that there's a lack of available housing on reserve is preventing people who want to move back from home from actually moving back home. And I saw in your 2021 annual report that you have investigated that link. And just wondering if you can expand on that report and what are the specific rigid housing regulations and practices followed by social service authorities that are in the way, and how should government cut back on this red tape so that Indigenous women can move back into their communities and reconnect with their culture?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And but unfortunately, I'm not an expert in this regard. We do have people that work out of NWAC that are based on this. My job as senior director is more high level. I'm the senior director of international governance and parliamentary relations. But I can't. It is an important question, and if granted, I can get back to you with specific recommendations in that regard, because I do want to be careful with this conversation, as it is a very important one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith and Ms. Rood, for your questions, and Ms. Smith for your answers, and other witnesses. We go on to our second questioner. We have from the Liberal Party, 6-minute round, going to, according to my notes, Vance Badaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask two questions. As many of the witnesses recognize, yesterday the budget was released. And with that, two areas of the budget that I was most interested in as the Parliamentary Secretary for Indigenous Services. One is off reserve in the urban and rural areas, in particular as it relates to housing. It was announced yesterday that $300 million in urban and rural housing is going to be brought forward. And I was interested in some of the comments that were made earlier by other panelists earlier on, and I wanted to clarify one thing and then ask a question. And the one thing I wanted to clarify is that the comment was made about the programming being controlled. I think was the word that was used by the CMHC, and that's in fact not the case. Unfortunately, the federal government doesn't have a Ministry of Housing or a Department of Housing, and therefore we delegate and/or count on the CMHC to be a flow-through for the monies that we would otherwise be putting toward those programs. And in this case, that's what they are, is a flow-through. But it's imperative that as the money flows through, we hear from the Indigenous community to in fact ensure and/or move forward with the recommendations that are brought to us by the Indigenous community. So I'd like to open up the question, and I think the question might be appropriately given to either Ms. Smith. I think Ms. Smith, I'll aim this question at you. Can you elaborate on some of the specific strategies that you can see some of these dollars going to, and how it would be rolled out to these different objectives in the urban and rural housing environment?
Thank you for the question, Honorable Member. I will discuss NWAC's action plan. So it's called Our Calls, Our Actions. And there NWAC, we're striving to implement the calls for justice under the MMIWG. In terms of housing, we are looking to develop a prototype for an affordable and culturally appropriate housing model on or off reserve. And I will highlight at this juncture too that we do have a healing lodge in Chelsea, Quebec. And we're looking to, and we're really getting into that land-based healing, and we're seeing wonderful results. And we're also set to open up a new another resiliency lodge in New Brunswick. But that's what NWAC is looking to do in terms of our action plan on this subject.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I'm going to now roll into another budgetary item that was contained within yesterday's announcement, Budget 2022, and that's the $4 billion in Indigenous housing that was announced, somewhat unprecedented with the amount of monies that are now going to be going on reserve to Indigenous housing. And we will work in partnership with the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities to co-develop and implement housing strategies. And I want to dig a bit deeper on that, to co-develop and implement housing strategies. So I'm going to open up this question to Ms. Child. Ms. Child, can you give some comment on that with respect to, again, co-developing and implementing housing strategies that would attach to yesterday's Budget 2022 announcement of $4 billion for Indigenous housing?
Thank you for your question. I definitely think in the co-development and just like reciprocal information finding, that I would really love to have opportunities to share our own frameworks on which we're hearing from the Indigenous street communities that we're serving. Over the past few years, we've been meeting directly with the Indigenous street community. And I think in that co-development that you're looking for, when we talk about cultural supportive housing, land-based healing, decolonizing harm reduction, I believe that there definitely needs to be a room in lane for us to lead some of this work. Sometimes in our work, we always have to show and reflect our research and our professionalism and how tight our knowledge is, and to like lead it forward. But I guess in this position, what we would be asking you, the government and others to help us do is like allow us to lead this work directly. Investing in Indigenous organizations that are willing to create different models and different avenues and solutions are individuals like and organizations like ourselves, the Aboriginal Coalition to End Homelessness. We started on a small dream and have built something very large in the sense of the impact that we're having on actually like housing people successfully. And I think that is should be seen as it's not about necessarily the roof and the four walls. It's about the service and the programming, creating ways to undress that feeling of being monitored and watched. There's many ways and times where Indigenous people have had to feel like they're lining up or a number or having a service. And the way that we want to lead is addressing the fact that we know what those feelings are. We want to eliminate them. We can do them with supporting the Indigenous population by reflecting that we've learned from that knowledge and that we're going to do something differently. And so investing into the work that we're doing creates a different platform in a way that we can actually like say we're housing people with this positive flow that everyone's trying to contribute to, from street to supportive housing to shelter, from supportive housing into independent housing and affordable housing. And I could tell you that we've helped 14 and pretty close to 20 people, and those numbers may seem small, but move into independent housing because we're a champion for them to witness their work. But in many sense, it was the discrimination and the visible viewpoint of them that didn't allow them to be housed. And once they had the support, you know, here they are over a year later, rocking it and feeling like a part of the society rather than, you know, I don't want to be the burden or I don't want to be certain things in this world, and are totally
Child,
going
I'm
to
sorry.
go on and be amazing.
We're about 45 seconds over. Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That's okay. It was a great
Thank
thought.
you, Mr. Chair.
I was trying to let you finish. I'm sorry. We're going to our next round of 6 minutes to the Bloc Québécois. Madame Gill, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses. It's very useful to have these varying points of view. I have many questions because Ms. Child, Roy Smith, you've also talked about culture and having to have cultural adaptations. I wonder if each of you could explain to us what needs you have identified in order to have culturally adapted measures, and then also what are the needs that you've identified. And I know there's been a lot of consultations and the definition of concepts and also the need for funding. So if each of you could respond.
Hello, thank you for your question. I think it's very important that we see these issues and solutions that are informed by trauma, right? Trauma-informed approaches is necessary, and of course. So that's what I would say, number one. Also, just understanding. So truth and reconciliation, it's to me means, truly understanding why we are in this situation, this dire situation that we see ourselves in. So that's the Indian Act. I can't get into all of that right now, but, to really, truly understand that so we can go forward. And I think one theme that came up today by other panel members, which I really appreciate and want to expand upon, is that land-based healing, right? And so I think that is, and then, so if we understand that approach with intersectionality, with trauma-informed approaches, I think we can move forward somewhere together, somewhere great together. So that's what I'll say.
Hello. I would like to start off by saying, for me personally, and in my experience within my career, going back to the elders and ceremony is incredibly important. Even with our Elders Lodge, with other projects, including a Sikinakiap, which was the first urban Indigenous immunization clinic in Calgary, and we immunized over 15,000 people and addressed vaccine hesitancy. What we did with that, we heard our elders. Our elders said, this is the things that we need, and this is how we would like to see it happen. And we worked within that, making this space for ceremony and tradition and storytelling. That's a key when working with our people, especially in an urban context, because what we're looking for when we're in an urban setting is we're looking for that connection. We're looking for that culture. We're looking for home. And if you have those components integrated within program, within housing, seniors housing, whatever it may be, you're going to see connection, response, and people living with dignity and respect. And that doesn't come naturally. We have to recover that. That doesn't come for free, right? It comes with connection and doing that work and engagement. That's what I would like to say. Thanks.
Gila Kesla, our land-based healing, because we have an island-wide mandate, we go right directly into community and ask for community for different layers of supports. And sometimes the individuals that we're bringing are connected to that community because of the work that we've already done with them. So we go as far as Kwakwaka'wakw territory, then there's Nuu-chah-nulth, and then there's Coast Salish. We do serve Métis and Inuit, and we do make sure that we try to have individuals that could come and support us directly in some of those teachings and protocols and ceremony. The one thing that I know that's important that we have recently added to our land-based healing is making sure that we also have a medical team that comes with us. So we're using kind of the dual model of health as well. So when we're taking an individual that still needs to use opioids or still needs to have a pour through a managed alcohol program, we're taking a medical team with us to support that individual so that that individual can be successful in the camp. So a non-judgmental space, making sure that we're looking all of that, the risk factors and the measures, but also connecting them to individuals that can support them in that ceremony, in that space. And I could tell you the beautiful thing that I've been able to see is that subtlety of that urgency of like having supply and then getting out into the land and kind of going, I don't need it right now. I'll let you know when I'll need it. I'm going to enjoy this moment. So having their own breakthroughs. So when we look at culture and when we look at tradition and ceremony is distinctly knowing where the individuals are from. And I could tell you some of the systems that aren't in place where we do need to invest in that is whether it's in data sovereignty discussions or whatever it may be, that we're actually pulling in that knowledge as a collective so that we can say directly how we're supporting the Indigenous population that needs these services. And the other piece in this is like traditional medicine and having access. It's pretty much through trade when you're in an urban setting of bringing traditional medicine in and having them have access to something that's familiar and smells. We all have that innate memory of what, you know, our mother or grandmother's bread or the smell of cinnamon is like. And that's exactly sometimes what medicine brings to us when we're able to kind of go, I need an alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Child, and thank you, Madame Gill. On to the NDP now for 6-minute rounds. Ms. Idlout.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. First, I will ask Corinne, Melissa, and your presentations went very well. Lisa, Corinne, I would have you reply to all of you reply to this. Have you seen and analyzed the 2022 budget released yesterday? I would like your opinion on this because what is missing and what is missing that should address Indigenous housing crisis. Thank you.
I guess I don't want to be rude and okay, good. Thank you for that question. You know, well, we did see $11 billion over 6 years and to go towards urgent needs such as housing, infrastructure on reserve. You know, that's, we're pleased to see that. But from NWAC's view, we would like to see additional funds to stop violence and genocide addressed in the MMIWG. But at this point, we're still doing a more detailed analysis. So I'll stop my remarks there, and I thank you for the question.
Thank you. I could tell you from our experience here in Victoria, unfortunately, sometimes funding needs to go a certain direction and they're not directly sure where and how to disperse it. Sometimes it gets centralized in hubs, sometimes friendship centers are used, sometimes community entities are used. It depends on where the community entity sits or what kind of relationship you have with like the municipality. These funds sometimes don't get to have a distinct like contact with us that are delivering the services. We recently, I'll just share this, applied for a healing house and had written a 268-page proposal in 60 days because of the announcements that have happened. And so when we look at that connection to land and call for RFPs and understanding where land opportunities are to do infrastructure builds, to create services, to implement our programs, those are majorly competitive and challenging. And when we're putting our best foot forward, we're not necessarily getting the response that's needed back to the Indigenous organizations that are directly serving this population. Sometimes it goes to the one that has a brighter partnership or a longer legacy or has, something in place. But
Thank you. Keep it short. I have a few more questions. Lisa has to reply. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And I will speak from a Calgary context from my own experience. And I can tell you that the urban peoples in Calgary specifically would benefit from more funding to support folks through a variety of different transitions in life. In fact, there's no transitional services for Indigenous women or men, even leaving addiction-based programs and things and migrating into affordable housing, which is the shortage of. So, and I echo what our executive director for the National Friendship Body had said in her previous answer as well. So hopefully I provided enough information for you about Calgary's context. Thank you.
Thank you. Corinne, Melissa, Lisa, thank you for your responses. The federal government always responds by saying that they are flexible. They can make adjustments to better suit the needs of Indigenous communities. Talking about flexibility with the budget, if you had the flexibility with the budget we heard yesterday, how would you make the adjustments?
Thank you for your question. I would, from our perspective, we would definitely put dollars into mental health and addiction support services on street level. In Calgary, we've seen an increase in opioid ODs. Like our team responds regularly along with other members of collaborating partners. And it is very sad with the health system being stressed as far as response and CPS response and things like that. So especially coming out of COVID and being socially isolated from everybody, we would definitely support and advocate for greater mental health and addiction supports in order to stabilize individuals and get them into safe places and get them into housing and continue to support them. Continuing care is a huge thing. Transitional supports, that's what we would advocate for and would like to see more of in all communities, not just urban, in rural as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roy, and thank you to our witnesses. Thank you, Ms. Idlout, for your questions. That was an amazing round, and I must say, although Zoom isn't my favorite, it was very welcoming and warming to see when one of you was speaking, the other two would be nodding or giving thumbs up. That was pretty amazing to watch. So it looked like we had great testimony, and everyone's on the same page with that. So well done, and thank you very much to all our witnesses. We're going to suspend quickly for a couple of seconds here and log into our next meeting so that we can go over the drafting instructions for our latest report. So thank you, everyone. And we'll see the panelists.
Thank you.